what did it take for us to get to the point of an apology? We had to threaten a lawsuit, Jesse. And by the way, we're still entertaining it. We're talking to some of
The escalating conflict between Charlie Kirk, the outspoken founder of Turning Point USA, and the daytime talk show The View has erupted into a high-stakes legal showdown that's less about courtroom proceedings and more about a broader reckoning with media accountability. At the heart of this saga is a $100 million lawsuit Kirk has threatened against the show and one of its hosts, Sonny Hostin, following comments made on air that linked Turning Point USA's youth summit to neo-Nazism. The remarks, which sparked outrage among Kirk and his supporters, were followed by an apology from The View, but the gesture has done little to quell the storm. Kirk's response, a blend of legal maneuvering and cultural commentary, signals a broader challenge to what he and others perceive as a media machine that thrives on sensationalism and unchecked narratives. The dispute began when The View's hosts, during a segment discussing Turning Point USA's Youth Summit in Tampa, Florida, suggested that the organization had ties to neo-Nazis who allegedly appeared outside the event. The comments, particularly from Hostin, ignited a firestorm, as they were seen by Kirk and his supporters as not just an attack on him, but a smear against the thousands of young attendees, high school and college students, who traveled across the country to hear from conservative speakers. The summit, a gathering of 5,000 young conservatives, was portrayed by Kirk as a vibrant celebration of ideas, a counterpoint to rising costs and economic challenges that might deter such large-scale participation. The View's remarks, he argues, were a deliberate attempt to undermine the event's success and paint its attendees as extremists. The apology from The View came swiftly, but it was met with skepticism. Kirk, appearing on Jesse Waters' show on Fox News, made it clear that the issue wasn't just about his personal reputation, but the impact on the students who attended the summit. These young people, he argued, were unfairly maligned, forced to carry the weight of being associated with neo-Nazism simply for attending a conservative event. The apology, in Kirk's view, was insufficient, a perfunctory gesture prompted not by genuine remorse, but by the threat of legal action. Turning Point USA sent a cease and desist letter to ABC, the network behind The View, demanding accountability for what they described as defamatory statements. Kirk's legal team, described as some of the best in the field, is now exploring a lawsuit that could reach $100 million, a figure so astronomical it's less about realistic damages and more about sending a message. This lawsuit, however, is not just a legal maneuver, it's a calculated escalation in a broader cultural war. Kirk isn't merely seeking financial compensation, he's challenging the very structure of daytime television, which he and his supporters view as a platform for performative outrage and ideological conformity. The View, with its panel of hosts known for their sharp exchanges and unapologetic opinions, has long been a lightning rod for criticism. To its detractors, the show is less about meaningful discourse and more about amplifying drama, where nuanced discussions are drowned out by eye rolls, sarcastic claps, and rehearsed indignation. Kirk's lawsuit aims to disrupt this dynamic, forcing the show and its hosts to confront the consequences of their rhetoric in a way they haven't before. Sonny Hostin, a former prosecutor who often leverages her legal background on air, finds herself at the center of this storm. Her comments about the Turning Point USA summit, particularly the suggestion that the organization was complicit in allowing neo-Nazis to appear outside their event, have been singled out as particularly egregious. Kirk and his supporters argue that Hostin's remarks were not just reckless but malicious, designed to inflame viewers and discredit a conservative movement gaining traction among young people. Hostin's legal expertise, once a point of pride on the show, now feels like a liability as she faces the prospect of a real courtroom battle rather than the mock trials she conducts on air. The irony is palpable. A host who brandishes her law degree like a prop may now need to rely on it in a high-stakes legal defense. The $100 million figure attached to the lawsuit is, by design, attention-grabbing. It's not just a number, it's a statement, a bold declaration that Kirk intends to hold media outlets accountable for what he sees as reckless character assassination. Critics might dismiss it as a publicity stunt, a way to keep Kirk's name in the headlines and rally his base. But even if the figure is more symbolic than practical, it underscores the seriousness of his intent. This isn't about a quick settlement or a quiet resolution. It's about challenging a media culture that, in Kirk's view, prioritizes clicks and viral moments over truth and responsibility. The lawsuit is a gauntlet thrown at the feet of The View and, by extension, the broader daytime TV landscape, which has long operated with a sense of immunity from the consequences of its rhetoric. The View, for its part, has built a brand on being provocative. Its hosts, Whoopi Goldberg, Joy Behar, Sunny Hostin, and others, thrive on spirited debates that often veer into personal attacks or hyperbolic commentary. The show's format, a roundtable of women with differing perspectives, was originally designed to foster lively but thoughtful discussion. Over time, however, it has morphed into something closer to a theatrical performance, where outrage is the currency and dissent is met with synchronized gasps or cutting one-liners. To its critics, The View has become a caricature of itself, a platform where emotional theatrics trump substantive debate, and where the line between opinion and defamation is often blurred. Kirk's lawsuit challenges this dynamic head-on. By targeting The View, he's not just taking on a single show, but a broader media ecosystem that thrives on conflict and polarization. The show's defenders might argue that it's simply exercising free speech, offering bold commentary in a marketplace of ideas. But Kirk counters that free speech doesn't grant a license to smear, particularly when those smears target private individuals, like the students at the Turning Point USA Summit, who lack the platform to defend themselves. The lawsuit, in this sense, is less about silencing The View and more about demanding accountability for the harm caused by its rhetoric. The cultural stakes of this conflict are high. The View has long positioned itself as a champion of progressive values, often framing its critiques as moral imperatives. Its hosts frequently invoke themes of justice, equality, and empowerment, casting themselves as defenders of the marginalized. Yet Kirk and his supporters argue that this moral posturing is selective, often wielded to dismiss or vilify those who don't align with the show's ideological bent. The suggestion that Turning Point USA's summit was tainted by neo-Nazism, for example, is seen not as a good-faith critique, but as a deliberate attempt to delegitimize a conservative movement gaining momentum among young people. This tension reflects a broader divide in American media and politics. On one side, you have outlets like The View, which cater to a predominantly liberal audience and frame their commentary as a defense of progressive ideals. On the other, you have figures like Kirk, who see themselves as counterweights to a media landscape they view as increasingly hostile to conservative values. The lawsuit, in this context, is more than a legal dispute. It's a proxy for a larger battle over who gets to shape the narrative in an era where media influence is both ubiquitous and fiercely contested. For Kirk, the lawsuit is also personal. As a public figure, he's no stranger to criticism or even outright attacks. But the targeting of his organization's young supporters crosses a line. These students, he argues, are not just attendees at a conference. They're the future of the conservative movement, young people who braved economic challenges and social stigma to engage in political discourse. By linking them to neo-Nazism, The View didn't just attack Kirk, it cast a shadow over thousands of young people who now face the stigma of being associated with extremism. This, Kirk insists, is not just irresponsible, it's actionable. The legal path ahead is fraught with complexity. Defamation cases are notoriously difficult to win, particularly for public figures like Kirk, who must prove not just that the statements were false, but that they were made with actual malice, meaning the hosts knew or should have known the claims were untrue. The View's apology, while tepid, could complicate matters as it suggests an acknowledgement of error. But Kirk's team appears undeterred, framing the lawsuit as a necessary stand against a media culture that too often escapes accountability. Beyond the courtroom, the lawsuit has already succeeded in one key respect. It's shifted the conversation. The View, accustomed to setting the terms of debate, now finds itself on the defensive, forced to reckon with the consequences of its rhetoric. Producers are likely scrambling to review past segments, wary of what other comments might invite legal scrutiny. The hosts, meanwhile, face the prospect of being deposed, their on-air bravado tested in a setting where facts, not feelings, hold sway. For Sunny Hostin, the stakes are particularly high. Her legal background, once a point of authority, now places her under intense scrutiny, as she must navigate a real legal battle rather than the performative ones she's accustomed to.